Thanks everyone for coming out to my talk, Blank Page Panic, Creating Confidence Through Test-Driven Development. My name's Elayne Juten. I use she, her pronouns. I am enjoying my second career as a software engineer at cars.com, located in Madison, Wisconsin. And shout out to Wisconsin. Midwest is best, as they say. And then I also have two adorable cats whom I miss very much, Henry and Otto. Let's give a round of applause for cats. Love them. So Blank Page Panic, it's in the title, but what the heck is it? It's a phrase that I started using to kind of describe something along the lines of writer's block, but for coding. It's where I'll pick up a story card, I'll read it through, I'll feel really comfortable and like, I know what to do, I got this. I'll open up my editor and I'll see that cursor just kind of like staring at me. And I start to sweat a little bit. I get a little more nervous. I look around, I work remotely, so I'll look at my cats. They know I know nothing. So then I'll start to think I know nothing and I'll just kind of spiral. And I will, in the worst of times, end up having a panic attack, like in the earlier years before I realized there's a way that I can fix this for myself. But I drive that hate train into hate station and hate myself for a really long time and not get a lot of work done. So doing some research into writer's block, since it is a similar phenomenon, I found this quote that really spoke to me. It's by Gene Fowler, who's an American journalist. He says, "Writing's easy. All you need to do is stare at a blank sheet of paper until drops of blood form on your forehead." And I feel like I've been there several times. And it does get easier, though. It can. So again, in researching that writer's block, a lot of these four core underlying causes seem to come up the most frequently, and those are fear, perfection, self-criticism, and external pressure. I definitely have the trifecta of fear, perfection, and self-criticism. They kind of just like, they live together in the same house, and on particularly good days, I'll create invisible external pressure to make myself feel even better about myself. So on those days, it's really fun to be me. So ways that I found before we get into the technical aspect of what I found to kind of help myself get over that anxiety and over the panic, I like to kind of go in a non-technical route. So one of the first things I do is exercise or just have a change of scenery. I need to get away from that editor. So I will get up, go make a cup of tea, go walk around the block. Even just going to get a fresh cup of water kind of helps me calm down just that little bit, where I'm not in that sheer panic, point of no return mode, and I can come back and kind of dig in and get into the process that I found has worked for me. Another one, if I'm not at the point of no return, switching tasks can be really helpful. So if I catch myself spiraling into hate station soon enough, grabbing a PR, responding to some emails, getting those quick wins and those quick items off of my to-do list and slowly building up that confidence, I found really helpful. But again, if I'm like fully hating myself, I need to step away. I can't just do this PR because then I'll do this PR while also hating myself, and it's not fun. And then do not disturb. I like to pair this with everything. Once I come back and I'm in that kind of emotionally fragile position, I tend to try to put myself on Do Not Disturb on Slack, block off some time on my calendar, like this is when I'm gonna start working on this story. It helps to minimize distractions. I'm the type of person, I don't have social media, but by God, I will look at all of the social media when it's something that I feel uncomfortable doing. And then one thing that I found that has really stuck with me for the past 3 years that I've been putting this talk together is progress, not perfection. I'm definitely a perfectionist, and kind of having that thought process of each step is progress towards the end goal. It doesn't have to be pretty. Eventually we'll get there. And progress, not perfection is actually a great segue into test-driven development. Test-driven development, or TDD, as I'll probably call it throughout the talk, is a process of writing tests first, then following those error messages to either a new error message or having the test pass. So before I actually write up my test file, get everything going, I'm gonna do a lot of pseudocode. I love pseudocode. I write notes to myself all the time in coding files, and then delete them before I commit if they're inappropriate. And they're high-level descriptions of a product or a process. They're in comments within the files, so the program won't see it. It's only for you. So let's set the scene for this example of how we're gonna get out of this panic. So a local humane society has an application called Creature Comforts that they use to track all animals from intake to the day that they're adopted. They want to add a feature that allows for food to be calculated for meal times so volunteers know how much to feed each animal. So we get this story card. As an adoption center employee, I want to have the daily amount of food calculated for an animal based on the animal type. For this instance, we're going to do dogs and cats, and weight, so 10 or more pounds or under 10 pounds. So the story card seems to make sense. I'm still not feeling great about myself, but I did get a cup of tea, fresh water. I'm ready to go. So this is where I go into Pseudocode Setup. Again, I write a lot of pseudocode, so I use 3 forms of pseudocode. What I like to call the Pseudocode Dump, which is basically copying and pasting the story card. I like to, again, limit distractions. And if I don't have to switch between a browser and an editor, the easier it is for me. So I like to kind of have everything all in one place so I can reference it when I want. Then I have focus pseudocode, which is taking out a small chunk of work that I'm gonna do first. This is easier, bite-sized pieces, kind of like moving to a PR or responding to an email, something a little easier to build up my confidence. And then I'll go into structured pseudocodes. Naming things is like the hardest thing in development, and so I will put in ideas that I have for variable names, ideas that I have for method names, just to kind of start to get that process going. I can always look back at it, and if I don't like it, it's pseudocode, so I can just change it. So this is what my pseudocode dump looks like. Again, normally I'll just copy and paste the story card, but I want it to be fancy today. So I write, within the daily routine, food needs to be calculated based on animal type and animal weight. 10 pounds is the weight threshold for both dogs and cats. And then for focus pseudocode, again, I'm stripping down the general story card to make it easier to swallow. So I'm saying a method for calculating food in the daily routine file. I'm gonna start with dogs over 10 pounds, and then once passing, I'll add dogs under 10 pounds. And then the structured pseudocode, again, a lot of repetition, but I need it at this point. Within the routine class, dogs only for now. I make sure I like to, eat the whole cake instead of have a slice. I'm gonna have a calculate food method. I know I need an animal type and an animal weight variable passed into those. And then over 10 pounds, or 10 pounds or over is 2 scoops of food, and under 10 pounds is 1 scoop of food. So I'm feeling okay. I have something in a file. That's always good. And so this is when I'll move into RSpec. So RSpec is a testing language written in Ruby for Ruby. It's designed with test-driven development in mind, and there are several blocks that we can use to kind of flesh out our skeleton. No pun intended. So we have the describe blocks, the context blocks, and the it blocks. And I like to think of these as an upside-down triangle, similar to the pseudocode that I wrote, the 3 kind of levels of pretty general to really specific, like method names. That's kind of how these blocks work out too. So the describe block is a class or method called, really broad ideas, and then we'll move into the context, which is adding more description to the describes. So if we say the describe call is the calculate food method, the context will be when it's a dog, when it's over 10 pounds, situations like that. And then the it block lays out the specifications for the context. So these are opening up our test cases. So it returns the proper amount of food, it returns 2 scoops of food, however you want to set it up. So let's set it up. I'm going to start with the describe blocks. So in my routine creator spec, I have a describe of the routine creator class. I'm creating a new instance of the class in order to have access to animal type and animal weight throughout our test file. And then the main thing we're going to be focusing on is this describe calculate food. So I'm just setting up that method call. So then we're going to move on to the context blocks. So within here, I'm going to say when the animal type is a dog, and within that context, I have another context of and weighs over 10 pounds. So we're kind of narrowing into where our test case is going to land. And again, I'm also creating instance variables here just to make sure that the animal type is indeed a dog when we run this test and the animal weight is over 10 pounds. So then we have our if blocks. So for this one, it's pretty simple. It returns the proper amount of food. So this is what we have so far for our test setup. I think this is a pretty good skeleton, so I'm going to start to run that test. And the tests fail. This is good. This is test-driven development. Sometimes it's really hard to see red, but as long as we keep going and there are new error messages happening, we're on the right track. So we never required a routine creator test file. We also don't have the Ruby file, but again, I want to do the simple, most basic things first and just follow the error messages. So I know what I need to do. This is a good start. I'm feeling okay. So I'm going to require the routine creator Ruby file in my test file, and I'm going to run that test again. I'm going to predict that it's going to fail, but let's see. And it does fail. We don't have that routine creator file, which I kind of knew, slowly starting to build up that confidence. I like to try to guess if the test is going to pass or fail, just to try to slowly build up my knowledge again, and kind of confirming that I maybe sort of know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to create a routine creator file. I'm not going to put anything else in it. Again, I'm going strict test-driven development right now. Do as little code as possible to get to the next error message. I'm going to run that test again. And the test fail, uninitialized constant routine creator, because I never created the class. So I'm going to go in, create that routine creator class. I'm going to run the tests again. And I'm getting an argument error. So it's expecting, I've been given 2 variables, but it expected 0. So sometimes it's hard to see all the failures, but these are all new failures, no repetition still. So looking back at my test case, I see that I created that instance routine creator class, and I put in animal type and animal weight. So it's expecting to see those 2. So I should probably add those in my actual Ruby file. So I'm going to create an initialize constructor to provide those 2 arguments, and I'm going to run the test again. And the test passed. The skeleton is set. We're getting there. I can feel my confidence slowly starting to grow little by little. That does deserve, I wish my cats would applaud every time I got test to pass. But now it's time to move on to the actual test case. So we have our skeleton. It's getting through and not seeing what it wants. This is where expect comes in. So this is technically not a block, but like if you're thinking of the upside down triangle, it's the like tippy point. It's exactly what you want to come out of this. So within the it block, we're going to say expect that routine creator class calculate food method to equal 2 scoops of dog food. We're going to run the tests, and they fail. But we had it passing once, but that's cool. Undefined method calculate food. Oh, that makes sense. I never put the calculate food method in the Ruby file, so I'm just going to add that there. I'm going to run the test again. I think that they're going to fail, and they do. It's expecting 2 scoops of dog food, but it got nothing because we don't have anything in there. So I'm feeling good. Everything is running. I'm actually getting all the way through that test file. It's getting to that expect. That's always a good sign. Doesn't always happen, but in this case it did. So I'm going to just put return 2 scoops of dog food. I know later down the road we're going to deal with cats, we're going to deal with dogs under 10 pounds, but for now, this is all we need. I'm going to run the tests, and the tests pass again. We fixed it. We're getting there. I'm feeling really good. I'm going to take a look back at my focus pseudocode, And it looks like we're pretty much halfway through the dogs. So all we need to do is add the dogs that are under 10 pounds. And it looks like, okay, they get 1 scoop of dog food. That's good. So this is going to look very similar. So I'm going to add a context in line with the same kind of weight context that we had before and say, and weighs under 10 pounds. I'm going to make sure that the animal weight is under 10 pounds for this test. I'm going to add an it, returns the proper amount of food again, but this time we want it to return 1 scoop of dog food. I'm going to run the tests. I know that they're going to fail because I only have that 1 return in the Ruby file, and it does. So we expected 1 scoop of dog food, but got 2 scoops. So this is what we currently have, and so I'm going to add, again, the least amount of code possible to get this to pass. So I'm adding in those lovely if-elses. So if the animal weight is over or equal to 10 pounds, we want 2 scoops, else we want 1 scoop of dog food. I'm going to run the tests again, and the tests pass again, and that is committable code. It's not everything, but starting somewhere. So looking back at my focus pseudocode, it's completely done. So I'm past that blank page panic point, technically. My confidence is growing every step and every test failure, weirdly. And seeing those tests pass and getting that first commit is the kind of emotional hug that I need. So looking back at my story card, I still have cats to do. So we're going to rewrite that focus pseudocode. This helps me, again, not look at the huge picture and do it chunk by chunk. So the focus pseudocode I have now, refactor dogs to include animal type, now that we're adding in the cats. And then we're going to move on to cats over 10 pounds or equal to. And then once passing, add cats under 10 pounds. So this is where I'll go in and refactor a little bit. I know I'll need to start factoring in animal type. So I'm going to create another if-else. I don't love the if-else nesting, but we could always refactor more later. But right now, I just kind of want to get the motion still going. So I'm going to run the test again just to make sure that the refactor worked. It did. So I'm going to commit that code as well. And now I can focus in on the cats. So again, this is going to look really similar, and it's also going to speed up because it's pretty much the same tests. When the animal type is a cat and weighs over 10 pounds, we're going to return the proper amount of food, which is 2 scoops of cat food. I'm going to set this all up, and then I'm going to run the test again, and it fails. It's expecting 2 scoops of cat food, but it got nil because we haven't added any of that into our Ruby file. I'm going to add the 2 scoops of cat food in there in another if-else. But, taking a look at this, I think there's an easier way to do it. This is where tapping into my emotional self is really important. I feel pretty confident. I feel I know where this story is going to go. So this is where I'll start to stray from really strict test-driven development, and I'll start to refactor again. And I'm going to refactor again. So what if I removed the animal type altogether? And what if I just interpolated that animal type right in the return string? I think that'll work. So I'm going to add that in, and I have the interpolation in there. I'm going to create an additional test because I haven't tested when cats are under 10 pounds, just to make sure I have all 4 test cases available. I'm going to run the tests, and the tests pass. So thank you. My God, I've never gotten applauses in my test runs. So just like that, our second focus pseudocode is done, and the story is done. I'm feeling great. So we have our routine creator spec file with 4 tests that are testing if dogs are over and under 10 pounds, and if cats are over and under 10 pounds, and they're all passing, and we have some nice, clean, simple, easy to read in my eyes code. Again, we can always refactor later. I can send it to the PR gods for them to strike down. But it's a way that I found to really help get over the lowest of the lows of feeling like I didn't know anything, feeling like I wasn't enough, like I wasn't a programmer. Everybody knows and everybody's gonna know. And I found that this kind of step process to really help get me out of that low. So I'd love to know what has worked for any of you. Feel free to DM me on Slack. I love picking and choosing. I feel like this is kind of an a la carte menu, same with test-driven development, where you can kind of pick what really works for you and leave what doesn't. And this is an ever-evolving get myself out of a bad situation routine. These are my references. Again, I'm Elayne Juten. Thank you so much for coming to my talk.